My bad, folks. I thought I was on the screen there. What's your name? Acres and acres. Walk on, even peoples. It's that time again when we saddle up and host the Even People show. So I apologize for not being around last week. I was traveling and I had intended to post some recorded videos that I have, and I simply never got around to it, man. Thing ran away from me. It's like a runaway train. I was chasing it and I did not catch up. All right. But 2 weeks ago, we were on. There goes my pen. 2 weeks ago, we were on and we had a show about the elusive orgasm. And if you missed the elusive orgasm show, you need to go back and check that show out. That show is nice. We made some discoveries on that show. Some of the information we had to talk about on that show, like some of the statistic I came up with or that I researched, predominantly being, the use of toys, who uses toys the most. We're just not where we thought the show was going to go. The statistics, when you heard the name and what would have come to mind, I would think the statistics didn't actually support that. We found it out that, people that are married or in committed relationships living at home with their significant others use toys quite a bit more than single people. All right. And that was just one of the fun facts we had for that show. So if you missed a show 2 weeks ago called Elusive Orgasm, yeah, when you get a chance, go check that out. That was bad. That was lit. We had some fun doing that. All right. So tonight I have every time I say I have a quick show for y'all, somehow it's not too quick because we get into stuff. So we'll see what happens today. Today we're going to talk about gender roles and non-negotiables. Now, gender roles and non-negotiables is pretty straightforward to a large extent, but we're gonna jump right into it. Actually, let's do that. So, gender roles, non-negotiables. Um, Gender roles are evolving. I would like to say, gender roles have evolved from where they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. My shirt is best of 1978. Gender roles have changed since what they were back then. Bless up yourself, Mel, or Angel Mel, in fact. Mel, we have to discuss that name at one point here or the other. So, gender roles are essentially how society expects you to act, speak, how society expects you to dress, groom yourself, conduct yourself based on what gender or what sex you are. Okay, that's essentially what gender roles are. It is what society deems normal or acceptable for a specific gender, for a specific sex. Bless up yourself, also, Vimbai. All right, so example, girls are expected to dress feminine. Girls are expected to be accommodating and nurturing. Men are expected to be strong, aggressive, and bold, are just some of the more broad stroke stereotypes associated with gender roles. Now, as far as stereotypes goes, because all right, so here it goes. Gender roles are society specific. Okay, they typically are society specific, and they are society specific because they're tied to the stereotypes that that society or that community has for how men should act, how women should act. So in one part of the world is very different from it is in another part of the world. For our purposes here, stereotypes essentially are widely accepted or biased about a person or a group. They sometimes can be unequal, they sometimes can be unfair, they sometimes can even be sexist, but that's just a stereotype associated with. And y'all know how stereotypes go. Black men are this, or black women are that, or white women are this, or Asian people are this, or whatever. I mean, they're stereotypes. Some of them are pretty on the nose, some of them are wildly inaccurate. Now, as far as gender roles go, what you like, what you don't like, what your deal breakers or non negotiables are, they tend to fall in four broad categories. Okay. And the four broad categories they fall in are personality traits. So, personality traits deal with account, um, personality traits like, being accommodating for a female or emotional for a female versus self confident or aggressive for a male, like we mentioned here just before. Another gender role or another stereotype associated with gender roles has to deal with domestic behaviors. Domestic behaviors. So you say, take care of the kids, cook, clean for the woman versus taking care of the finances, work on the car, or do the repairs around the house for the men. All right. Now, category number three is occupations. Occupations, thinking that gender roles, women should be teachers and nurses, men should be pilots, doctors, and engineers. And the physical appearance category, women should be thin and graceful, men should be tall, dark, handsome, and muscular, and women should wear dresses and wear makeup, men should wear pants and boots. Okay, so what we're trying to formulate here are some broad strokes, some broad stroke gender roles that are out there, some broad stroke acceptable or not acceptable things as to how we in our society think men should behave or women should behave, or men should do or women should do, or men should dress or women should dress, right? Um, or and what chores they should do in a relationship in the household. All right. Now, you have instances where these things can be blown out of proportion, where you call it hypermasculinity or hyper femininity, where it's just over the top. And these are like exaggerated stereotypes where you have for the feminine side being passive, or accommodating now becomes being passive, being naive, being sexually inexperienced, being soft, being flirtatious, being graceful, being nurturing and accepting. Where you have some folks that feel like they need to take this whole thing to a whole nother level. They need to be hyper feminine or hyper masculine. Greetings, Katie Abocha. From the other side, the masculine side, it's hyperaggression, believing that you're supposed to compete with other men to dominate women, right? Being aggressive, being worldly, being sexually experienced or promiscuous, being insensitive, being physically imposing, ambitious, or demanding. So what we're talking about here is the extreme of gender roles. It's when somebody think, I'm a man, I need to, go out there and do all these things, or a woman think, oh my God, I'm a little lady, I'm only expected to do these things. And they take it into a whole nother level that it was really never intended to be in the first place. Right? Now, as y'all know, whenever I'm on the show by myself, I bring some statistics on the show as my host. And the statistic we're going to look at, there was some study done of like 30,000 people. They were asked 55 different questions. And the questions were geared toward assessing gender roles in their relationship. and they were trying to gauge satisfaction with various aspects of their life. Now, the theory that they were trying to prove or debunk is this: traditional masculine men and traditional feminine women, whether or not that makes a good pairing, right? So what they're trying to assess from their their um their survey or from their statistics is whether or not the theory of traditionally masculine men and traditionally feminine females making a good match. Because think about it. If they don't, what are we doing here exactly? Why are we advocating these stereotypes if they don't actually lead to a more successful relationship, right? So check this. Um, the paradox of the top that came about though is society seems to portray this as what should work, as if it is long-standing, tried, tested, and proven. Masculine male, feminine female together is what the winning combination is. But this survey of 30,000 people realized that it actually was not. It actually was not. In fact, relationships with traditional masculine male with a traditional feminine female oftentimes don't work out. Now, do the people stay together? Sometimes, yes, they do stay together. But like I said, the survey was trying to assess the satisfaction of various aspects of their life and intimacy. And some of the takeaways they had were that the people that were in those relationships, traditional masculine male, traditional feminine female, those women, based on the question that were asked, tend to more often than not said that they felt fat. The things their husbands said and did made them feel fat. Yeah, they also said they tire easily. Now, when somebody tires easily, that could be tied to stuff like feeling sad or depressed, was another thing that came out of the survey. Feeling worthless. And or feeling shy, I'm just going to rattle them off, feeling shy and feeling like they just can't go on. Now, I'm not even sure what to make of this, because if we're advocating traditional masculine male, traditional feminine female as a combination that works, it's kind of like the last show we had where the statistics end up not supporting what typically comes to mind when you hear a particular thing. The last show we had, we thought, single women would use more toys, and the statistics did not support that. We realized that married people or people in committed relationships especially the ones that live at home with their significant others, use and bought more toys than single people. Here, we are seeing where traditionally masculine males in a relationship with a traditional feminine female, the females actually, which is who the survey was done on, seem to not be as happy, or they felt all kind of isms and schisms, feeling fat, feeling sad, feeling depressed, feeling worthless in those relationships, versus the people who were in relationships where the gender roles were not as defined, or the gender roles did not subscribe to what society views as normal gender roles. Okay. Another thing we need to mention briefly is that gender roles typically are society based. So what constitutes normal female behavior in one society may not necessarily be normal female behavior in another society. Julian Lee, you made it again, my dear. I do appreciate you. Blessings, Julian Lee. So yeah, if you just joined, we talk about gender roles. We rattled off some statistics regarding that. We rattled off some stereotypes. We mentioned that they fall into four main categories, that being personality traits, domestic behaviors, occupation, and physical appearance. So essentially, we're saying that society has certain things that they view as standard operating procedure that these roles should fall under in these categories. So let's look at this for a minute. So we're talking about gender roles. We look at gender roles, essentially what a man should do in a relationship, what a woman should do in a relationship, what society thinks a man should do in a relationship, what your man does in his relationship, what your woman does in the relationship versus what society think they should do. How do they dress? How do they act? How they speak? What characteristics do they have? Everything that society perceives as normal or desirable or acceptable. Okay, those are gender roles. Now we also have non-negotiables as one of our things. Now non-negotiables. When I started looking at this show, I almost ended up with two shows. I almost ended up splitting the shows into two. One show talking about gender roles, another show talking about non-negotiables. Um, but we, I think I'm gonna try to merge them in here and make it into one show. Shauna K. Brown TV. Greetings, mother. So check this. Now we're going to talk briefly about top 10 non-negotiables. I looked at two different top 10 lists for non-negotiables. One of them was back in 2010. The other one is current in 2022. The 2010 list had physical affection. Now, one of the things I put out here is what's your non-negotiable? And of course, we're going to get down into the nitty-gritty here in a little bit. But as we're talking about these things, we're talking about gender roles and non-negotiables. Essentially, the argument we're having today, or the conversation we're having today, is what gender roles are non-negotiable for you? What is a must-have? What is a I would like? What is an absolutely not? What is a hell no? Right? As far as where you want your mate to be, the characteristics they need to have, the traits they need to have, and where you rank that on your own scale. Survey says the top 10 non-negotiables are physical affection. People like people that hug, kiss, cuddle, and can show love. So if the person you're with does not have these things or is incapable of these things, then we're not going to work out. Another one is honesty. And honesty overlapped both the one in 2010 and the one in 2022. Honesty, you can toss in faithfulness, loyalty, dependability. You can throw all those under the honesty umbrella, because those are all things that make up honesty, so to speak. So we said faithfulness, loyalty, dependability, all those fall under honesty. Now, as y'all are out there watching, let me know what your non-negotiable is, or you can wait till you hear the end of the list and see if it's not on the list or see if it is on the list. Sense of humor. Must have a sense of humor. And I was looking at another article, and sense of humor is losing its grip. Sense of humor apparently no longer has as much weight as it did as far as being a non-negotiable, or as far as even being a trait that one looks for, especially women in men. It's sense of humor, or the ability to make someone laugh, is apparently not as popular in our time as it was, say, 10 years ago, and definitely not in 1978. Now, respect is also one of them that was doubled down on last year and this year. 2010 and now. And it says boundaries. So when we're talking about respect, we're talking about boundaries. We're talking about space. We're talking about individuality. We're talking about time. We're talking about needs versus, you being judgmental versus you putting down a person based on their beliefs, based on their income. Okay. So we're talking about a non-negotiable. We're saying, if you're with someone, they have to respect you. They have to respect boundaries. They have to respect your personal space. They have to respect the differences you two have between each other. Have to respect your individuality, your time, your needs. Okay, and that's a legit one. I like that one. Another non-negotiable is kids, and I hope I'm saying that word right. It's kids. Whether you want kids, whether you don't want kids, whether you want a man that has kids, whether you want a woman that has kids, whether you would date a man with kids, whether you would date a woman with kids. That's pretty high up on the list of non-negotiables. Active was another thing. Active meaning, you have some folks that are homebodies. They don't want to go nowhere. They don't want to do nothing. Or you're a female or a male and you're with a gamer. Your significant other is a gamer. Those people that sit in front of the TV for copious amount of hours exercising their thumbs. Yeah, one of those people. Some folks say a non-negotiable for them is their person needs to be active. They do not want to be with someone that's a couch potato, someone that never wants to go anywhere, not interested in anything, and really, as long as they have that TV screen in their game, they're good to go. Religion is a non-negotiable. Political beliefs and religion are other non-negotiables. Essentially saying whoever you are with needs to share your political views. Whoever you're with needs to share your religious beliefs. Is that a non-negotiable for you? Financial stability is another one. Now, financial stability, that one overlaps both 2010 and now as well. And you have something versus, this thing called financial idiots versus, financial responsibility or financial savvy. You know, I was a guest on a show recently, and we were talking about love and money. And one of the points that came out of the show is you have to be with someone that has the same relationship to money as you do. And by that, I meant that you have to be with someone that their approach to money, how they see money, how they spend money, their value of money needs to be consistent with yours somehow. You see what I'm saying? Because at least when you guys come together, when you guys start making a life together, you will have the same relationship or the same attitude toward money. So you can't have somebody that everything they get their hand on money wise, they spend it with someone that's what's that word? What's the word I'm looking for? Somebody that's I know the word too. Anyway, somebody that don't like spend their money. Frugal, I think the word is. You can't have a frugal person and a spendthrift together. It's not gonna work. They're gonna have problems because they simply have different relationships with money. So it's saying financial stability not only applies to somebody that is financially stable from a earning, money I have in the bank standpoint, but is also from the standpoint of just being with someone who has a similar outlook on money and money management as you. All right, that's a non-negotiable. Somebody that's open, and open could be open to new ideas, open to change, open to just living life, or open communication versus somebody that just is closed off and doesn't like to talk about things. And as we go through these, I want you guys that are watching now and are going to watch later to actually think about these things. Like, are you actually even in a relationship where this actually really is a non-negotiable for you? But you've made it negotiable in the sense that you should have called it out when you should have called it out. You didn't call it out, and now you're dealing with it. Right? So whether it is physical affection, honesty, sense of humor, respect, views on kids, whether they're active, religious or political belief, financial stability, or whether they're open to new ideas, change, or even just communication. Are you in a situation, have you been dealing with a situation where this is not present, but because of the other variables surrounding the relationship, you have now allowed yourself to be in a position where you are negotiating, dealing, living with what should have been a non-negotiable. Mel is saying that saving and investment is a not. All right, there you go. Mel say if we don't have the same view on money, on savings, on investment, on how we spend our money, on what we do with our money, we can be together. And that's legit. That's legit. Because you can't have somebody out there that everything you're trying to save, they're trying to spend. You know what I mean? Everything they're trying to save, you're trying to spend. And then you end up, we watch too much show, right? You see too many shows on TV where people end up doing some drastic things at the end. What are you doing? My kid is making homemade ice cream. No, go away. I don't want to see your ice cream. What's happening here? My studio is being invaded by children or a child.
I'm 18.
You're 17, you're not 18. Mm. She's 17 and a half apparently, rounding up to 18. Can you imagine I have an 18-year-old? When did that happen? Vimba is saying honesty is a non-negotiable. And we said honesty, um, we put that under the umbrella with faithfulness, loyalty, dependability. And like we said, these are legit things because at the very end of the day, I think when you decide to be with someone, when you decide to invest your time, and life into someone, you want them to be honest because it's risky. You know what I mean? People, somebody can just get up and walk. You can just get up and walk. You know what I mean? So you kind of want to make sure that your communication, your feel for the person, your understanding of the person is accurate so that you can really have a good gauge of, is this a person that I can give myself to? Is this a person that I can give my all to? Is this a person I should give myself to in increments while holding some of myself back because I'm just not sure yet? You know what I mean? Or is this one of those just hold my hands out, lean back and fall because I know this person got me? You know what I mean? And those are legit non-negotiables. Um, Another one is ambition. Somebody that has a little get up and go, somebody that has a little fire, somebody that's willing to put in work when work needs to be put in. You know what I mean? And ambition can come in many form. Ambition does not need to mean you have the biggest job out there. It just means that you're not lazy. You know what I mean? You're not somebody, you are willing to get up and work, whatever the work is. So you're not going to sit here because you have this degree, not doing nothing for an extended period of time and not go find something else to do. So going to school, yes, might indicate that you have ambition, but if you're just sitting down, crossing your fingers, waiting on the job of your dreams to fall in your lap and not willing to go out there and do something, yeah, that kind of leaves it too. So ambition, what I mean, just willingness to get up and go. So some of the other things that came in 2022 that were not in 2010 were being your authentic self, being your authentic self. Um, what I mean? Don't give me your representative. Don't send your representative to meet me. Don't represent who you think I want you to be. Don't represent who you think I need you to be. Be your authentic self. Is non-negotiable. Um, don't change, and being your authentic self can be twofold. It can be where on the front end you are projecting what you think the person wants you to project in order for them to be with you, or it can be where you change yourself to fit into the situation that you find yourself in, right? And we're saying that those should be non-negotiable because you can only keep that up for so long and you're probably not going to be happy for the time that you're actually faking it. You know what I mean? Another one is shared goals for the future. Shared goals for the future. And like what Mel said, saving and investment is one of those things. It could be, marriage. Do you ever plan to marry me? Are we ever going to get married? Do you ever want to have children? What are your plans for retirement? Do you want to travel or are you a homebody? Like just whether or not do you want to retire in Jamaica or do you want to retire here in the US? Do you want to retire to Africa? Do you want to retire to Spain or France? Or do you never intend to retire? You plan to work till you die. These things are going to affect how your everyday interaction looks like. These non-negotiables are things that are going to help to determine what your actual everyday look like. So a lot of them are things that are dealt with at the front end of relationship or when relationship starts going left. They're actually things that if you get them right or wrong, you're going to affect what your everyday look like in a relationship, right? Um, let's see, what do we have here? Remember I said, oh my God, I was just talking. What is it? I was just talking about being your authentic self today. Another non-negotiable for her is somebody being their authentic self. Shauna K is saying, I love the idea of shared goals for the future. Yeah, because if you and two people are not, you're with someone and they're not going in the direction you're going, what are we doing? You know what I mean? What are we doing? If we're not moving in the same direction, then we probably just really need to go our separate ways. If ultimately being together is something that we're looking for. My sound is gone. Is it back now? The mic can still hear. Not sure what happened. My mic. Nope, I'm not mute, and my thing is good. I think I'm good. All right. Height is a non-negotiable. Mel, why you give so much trouble? You know, you want a shot man. You don't want a shot man, Mel. Okay, I hear you. No shot man for Mel. She says she needs to get somebody. What height are we talking about? We'll refresh. All right, let us know when you're back in business here, Sean. Okay. All right. So, being your authentic self. Another one we have is share goal for the future that I mentioned. And another one, the last one I think I have here is validation and support. Validation and support. You know, always be sound restored. Praise Jesus. Validation and support. You know, you being your significant other's cheerleader. You know, you supporting their views, supporting their interest, you validating them. You know what I mean? You see somebody working out to lose weight, you say the right things. You know what I mean? You see somebody make an effort to do something, you acknowledge the effort. You know, and it could be something simple from we have a date and the person put on makeup when they don't usually, or they put on a nicer earring when they don't usually, or they put on earrings at all, or they just wear something, or they did something they know you like, or they didn't do something they know you don't like that they usually do. You know what I mean? And you acknowledge that. And when it's time to support, when it's time to jump in and lend a hand, you jump in and lend a hand. Or you just be a cheerleader. You say, you know what? Yes, I agree. It's a good idea. You should do it. If you're going to do it, I will do this so you can do that. I will help with this so you can go do that. You know what I mean? It's being there. It's being a supportive. So it's being supportive. So we're looking at gender roles and non-negotiables. We're looking at what do you need your significant other, what roles in your mind, because socialization has a lot to do with this too. Socialization has a lot to do with this. It had to do with, you know, what you saw mom and daddy do. In fact, one of the shows we were having, I think it was the Baby Daddy drama show. The Baby Daddy drama show that I did with Venice Williams. And toward the end of the show, we stumbled on something. We were saying that, you know, some of the women that are actively, you know, going out there they're going out there living independent lives, life independent of men, in some instances because of relationships they had with men, and sometimes they're keeping their sons from the dad because of how bitter they are. Some of the times we find that they are creating individuals that are not really, they're creating individuals that has a certain outlook. So I grew up seeing mommy do everything, but mommy was doing everything because she chose to do everything. You see what I'm saying? So it's almost like I kind of get a socialization or a kind of skewed perspective on the woman's role. And now if I'm with someone and they're not doing everything the way mommy did everything, it's almost like now I view them as less than. You see what I'm saying? But it's not because this is right or wrong per se. It's just because this is how I grew up seeing things done. Mommy smothered me essentially because she wanted to keep daddy out of the equation because daddy was a rolling stone, or because daddy never supported us the way he should, and mommy could have, so she did. And she stood tall and she rose to the occasion and she made it work. But a byproduct of that is that now she's given me, even though this was definitely what she was trying to do, but she ended up giving me a warped concept of the woman's role in the home. You see what I'm saying? So now me, instead of her raising, even though she was working hard to achieve what she did, she ended up raising a bum or she end up raising somebody that expect women to come and do everything she did for him. Whether she, and mind you, I'm not saying this has to be the outcome by any stretch. I'm saying we just realize that sometimes this is the outcome, where you have some of these young men who, because of their extra effort that mom made to make sure that they were provided for, they sometimes get a warp sense of what a woman's role in a relationship is. And when they themselves are in relationship, they're dysfunctional because the expectation that they now have is unrealistic. All right. Now, that was a segue. Vimba is saying, although there some of these non-negotiable, although are some of these non-negotiables teachable? Potentially. What if everything else is perfect and all you need is some growth together? Now that's definitely a potential. That's definitely a potential, because some of these things are teachable, or some of these things are things that are changeable, and some of these things are things that you can help. You have people that get together and help each other evolve exponentially. You could have somebody who has the potential to do so much things, but just never had a cheerleader. Like the last one said, validation and support. The person just never had a cheerleader. They just didn't have somebody in their section to say, yes, try it. Yes, do it. Yes, go for it. Yes, you can do it. You got the skill set. You have this, you have that. Go out there and do it. Right? And they find somebody like that, and they now develop traits that they had before but never got a chance to develop, because our emotional development is different. If we say that gender roles are influenced by society and socialization, then it's not going to be the same. And if it is influenced by society and socialization, then it's teachable, because socialization is teachable. It's something that is learned, it's something that evolve over time with experiences. So yes, absolutely. And that would probably be a best case scenario. If you find something, even the relationship to money, like Mel says, yeah, you can find somebody that had, didn't have the most productive relationship to money when you met them, but because of being with you, you teach them how to be responsible with their money. You can teach people how to express emotions that just never had to, and never learned how to. You know what I mean? People can meet people that make they change their opinion on kids. Somebody said them, nah, them no have no more kids, and meet somebody that them would have just do anything for, including have a half dozen more kids. You know what I mean? It's my Jamaica cup, mate. All right, so moving on up like George and Wheezy. I ain't gonna keep y'all long today. So let's look at this. Do non-negotiables change with time is actually the next thing I have here. And even by your question, kind of walked us right into that. Is does with time, do non-negotiables change with time? And we just established that yes, they can. Yes, non-negotiables, your non-negotiable and what your non-negotiable is can change. And you can meet someone who on the surface has one of your non-negotiable, and they can change with time. Now, I'm not saying go be with them across your fingers. Yo, can I tell you, back in the day, man, back in the day, you had all these, can I say this? Of course I can, it's my show. Back in the day, you had all these ladies who, no man wasn't in the church when I was growing up. There was like 2 men and 50 women in my church. And you had these women that would get with these men that they're gonna convert. It never usually goes that way. The men come to church for a period of time. They end up with a child. Sometimes the man end up back a street, and they just have another child come into church with now, and the relationship, because in their mind they were gonna convert him, and it never work out. So sometimes it doesn't work out. So make sure, say, the non-negotiable that you're gonna, and that goes back to the person, the religious beliefs is what I'm getting at. So make sure that if you decide to go that route, it is something that is actually teachable, and you don't allow yourself to fall into something that you really can't negotiate your way out of. Now, let's see, what do I have here? Now, here's one, is what you are willing to do or put up with in a relationship a variable based on your experiences? Think about it. Is what you are willing to do or put up with in a relationship a variable based on your experiences? So let's look at it. We're talking about non-negotiables. And we're saying, is what your non-negotiable is what your non-negotiable is, or what they are, or what you're willing to put up with in a relationship, does that change based on your experience? So say for example, you you were in a relationship, and because of the deficits of that relationship, your non-negotiable for your next relationship changed, because you probably took a chance and went in hoping something would change. It didn't change. You realize some other things too, and you're like, absolutely not. You cross them up, you mark them off of the list, and you're like, these are absolute non-negotiables. Or it could be where something that was a non-negotiable when you were 25, you're more flexible with that 35, or you're more flexible with that 45. You know what I mean? So where the height, like Mel said, where the height was a non-negotiable at 25, Mel, at 35, when you're still not, settled down, you might be a little more flexible. At 45, 50, when you're still not, you might be a little bit more negotiable. You might flex a little bit more with those things. So it's like, is what you are willing to make a non-negotiable a variable based on your experiences, based on where you are in life? And Mel said, no, sir, you have to talk. No matter how old maybe, you have to talk. And the last thing I'm going to leave y'all with is those holding out, and this is the reverse side of that same coin, does holding out for the non-negotiable get you what you want, or do you just end up lonely and by yourself? Does holding out typically get people what they want, or do they just end up lonely? So essentially, the question now becomes, how hard should we draw the line for the non-negotiable? And of course, I know it's going to be a variable depending on what it is, but how flexible should we be with some of our non-negotiables, especially if we have a long list of them? If all these ducks don't line up in a row, am I never going to find all these ducks lined up in a row? And the flip side of that same coin, and more like the rim of the coin now, becomes, if you do find someone, like we started off initially, and like we started off by saying, the true masculine man, the true masculine woman should work out, and we find out that it doesn't all the time. Should you find someone that check all those boxes, does that guarantee success in the relationship? Does that guarantee success in the relationship? Should you find someone that meets all your criteria, none of your non-negotiables are present, and on the surface are good to go? If you do end up with that person, does that guarantee riding off into the sunset? And if not, what does? Does it come back now to compromise, where you get someone who does not necessarily have all your non-negotiables, but you are the person, you can give a little, take a little, and y'all can figure it out and end up working through things? You know what I mean? How much of a plug and play does the situation need to be? You see what I'm saying? How much do they need to have coming in the door? How much of the stars need to align on the Orion, before you step in? And is waiting on all of the stars to align the prudent way to go? Or is it that you should, just like anything else we do, assess, decide, and build? Right? And that's all I got for y'all today, man. Y'all can dissect your own situation and see where you're at. Because you see, here on the Even People Show, I really just try to talk about things to make people think about things. So yeah, like 2 weeks from now, someone gonna come up and you're gonna remember that. Wow, Martin said something about that. or it makes you think about your own situation, or it makes you think about what's going on with you. That's what we hear about on the Even People show, especially when it comes to things that men don't really too like talk about. That's what I'm trying to revive here. So yeah, I'm me personally just kick the ants nest and run. That's what this is about. Mel says it could. So one have to be careful what those non-negotiables are. But like you said, Martin, things change over time. I had to train my husband to change some things. Well, and that's not bad. And if it's the person who's willing to change those things, you know what I mean, if the person has the aptitude to do so or loves you enough to make the sacrifice within themselves or the compromise to do so, then it can essentially be a beautiful thing. So you essentially built a person you got into the person that you wanted them to be. Sean K is saying having a checkbox approach is too rigid, especially if certain key criteria are not on your list. So it's like eHarmony. It's like dating online on eHarmony, where they have like 57 questions that they ask you. And you answer all the questions and you figure say yes. When somebody pop up and say you are a match for so and so, you go with the person and you're like, the hell? What? How could I possibly be? So Shauna K said, not too much. So you know what? I'm actually going to change the poem I was going to read today based on the fact that we ended up talking about checklists and whatnots. That brought something I wrote to my mind, and that's what we're going to read today. So, like I was saying, folks, this is just, there's a poem I wrote that I read recently, or had a friend of mine read recently. And the last two lines of it says, in this episode, we have no solutions to give. This is just the life we live, or something like that. Right? So, yeah, in this episode here, I have no solutions to give. I'm just kind of make y'all think about this life here that we live. All right. The show is gender roles and non-negotiables. We talked about, what you perceive as traditional gender roles, what roles your significant other have to have, what boxes do they have to tick, what non-negotiables are you willing to work and or not work with. We gave you a list of everything. We told you what stereotypes are, what hyper stereotypes are, and we got real into it. So I appreciate y'all staying tuned. So before I jump off, I'm going to read some poetry for you today. I was planning to read a poem called Hymn. I had it all queued up. If this is your first time for whatever reason, the poems come from my book called Love Life Confrontation Expressions, selections from the Chronicles of a Black Man, available in Fontana Pharmacies and Amazon.com. And on martinmbooks.com too. I didn't mention that. I don't mention that often. martinmbooks.com is actually my website. And it tells you about the book. And it has a buy now option on there that you can buy a book. Who knew? Now you know. All right, so check this. The poem I'm going to read is actually called Intellectually in Love. It is actually the first poem in the book called Intellectually in Love. And I'm going to read Intellectually in Love because of what we were talking about non-negotiables and so on. Intellectually in Love kind of talks about somebody who is using their intellect to guide their emotions. And the poem is written in such a way that is asking whether or not this is something that you should do, whether or not this is the way to go. Is me using my intellect to do things my heart should be doing the way to actually go about love? So the poem is Intellectually in Love. It's the first poem in the book. And here goes, written in 2015. It says, possessing the intellect to perceive, skill in the art of make-believe, decisive enough to know when to stay, caring enough to walk away, a master of doing what is needed, dynamic, flexible, not rooted, eyes wide open, seeing both sides, a guided truth rooted in lies, a connection based on logic, no real thought, somewhat automatic, pieces put together over time, being shown the ropes by the blind, arriving at a destination not sought, waking up, same surroundings, but you're lost. So much time spent being part of a group, individuality needing time to recoup, intellectually stimulated emotion. Take a moment, ponder the notion, knowing the right words to be said, following the leader, though not being led. Me, like a toddler in school, hands raised, proudly following the rules. It's like becoming a victim of one's own self, consistently winning every hand you're dealt, confusing successes with delusion, mistaking the self you aspire to be for the real one. As a man thinketh, so is he. But which thought constitutes my reality? Has my intellect led me down a path, one my emotions would never walk? Has knowing the right answers made me stray from my true self and my true ways? And now, when my eyes are opened, do I go back and fix what's broken? Faced with a hand you know you can't win. Intellectually, you can, but that's the thing. The Book of Expressions, written in 2015, like we said, it's like dealing with situations that on an intellectual level you can deal with it. Yes, I can deal with this person that's short. Yes, I can deal with these situations that are really non-negotiables, but from an intellectual standpoint I can make it work. You know what I mean? I can go in the situation and work with it. But really, is that what you really want to be doing? You know what I mean? Are you really wanting your intellect to be guiding things that the heart should be guiding? Or should it be a bit of both? You know what I mean? Like I said, no solutions to give today. A lot of relationships are based on compatibility rather than sustainability. I believe this direction contributes to failed relationship. What happens is that there is no more what happens if there is no more compatibility? So yeah, we look at compatibility rather than suitability. A lot of relationships are based on compatibility. So because we think we're, like he said, we're compatible. You know what I mean? He checked. And this poem called Intellectually in Love, I wrote this poem after having a conversation with someone who had been happily married for about 10 years. And we had a conversation and they were saying to me that, you know what? They woke up one day and it's almost like all of them woke up that day, as opposed to every time before when they realized that where they're at, and who they're with is not where they want to be or who they want to be with. It's just that they spent all their life making the right decisions for mommy, the right decisions for daddy, the right decisions for the church I go to, the right decisions for everybody else in my life as far as what they thought my life should look like and who they said I was supposed to be. I made all the decisions in my life up to now with all those things in mind. And 10 years later, with the person that I am with, I wake up one morning and it's like my true self woke up with me that day. And I realized this is not, if I had made all decisions I had made so far for me, I wouldn't be here, because a lot of these things, looking at them now, that wasn't me. That was mommy inside my head. That was daddy inside my head. That was my church ambiance, what my church is, what it represents, what it told me I should be, who it told me I should pick, what criteria it told me my significant other should have. And I found somebody that met all these criteria for everybody else but myself. And I woke up one day in a position and here we are. And like the poem says, and now when my eyes are open, do I go back and fix what's broken? Faced with a hand you know you can't win. Intellectually you can, but that's the thing. You can continue to go like you're going. You can. But why? Why? When you realize now that this is not what you want to be doing, do you continue going or do you stop? But then the thing again now is, what's stopping going to look like? like I said, person happily married. Is this now going to look like a divorce? Is this going to look like a this and a that? And based on your beliefs and everybody around you, it might not be something you want to undertake. But is it going to actually make you happy in the end? How much weight should we play on that versus playing on our gender roles that we fall in? All right. I agree completely 100%. It's more about compatibility. Are we saying it should be based on compatibility? Are you two saying the same thing? It's more about compatibility. I'll let y'all work that out. And Maxi K is saying one of my faves, deep. That intellectually in love is deep. I coined that term myself. Thank you very much. If somebody else said it before me, I didn't know about them, so it's still mine. All right, folks, that's the ball game. Thank you so much for staying with me. And as usual, like I said, when these shows start, half the times I don't know where they'll end up. But this is where we ended up today. We touched on a couple other shows. We mentioned a couple other things. But like I said, go through, check it out, assess your own situation, assess your own self, and find out what works for you. But ultimately, I think we all have a duty to ourselves to be happy. And sometimes we lose sight of that in light of making others happy. But we all have a duty to ourselves to be happy. We all have a duty to ourselves to actually go out there and try to live our best lives, and whatever the stereotype might say, like we established, the pure masculine male and pure feminine female is not the way to go. And what that's going to affect is everything within the whole spectrum that we think should be for the male or should be for the female. Once we establish that the premise itself is flawed, then everything within the premise goes left. You see what I'm saying? So who does what in the relationship? All that's out the window. You can actually create for you based on who you're with. Who does what? You can create your own gender roles. And as long as you're truly happy and comfortable with it, you can make that your happiness. You know what I mean? Society is who we're taking, our marching orders from now. Society is a bunch of crazy people. They just overturned, let me not even touch that. They just overturned Roe v. Wade. But that's a whole nother thing. It's a whole other thing, and I'm not going to talk about today. You've been watching the Evening People Show, and from the bottom of my heart, mates, from the bottom of my heart, I just got to say, I really do appreciate y'all. And next week, same time, I apologize for last week. I was on the road, and my bad. But for right now, I'm out. Peace.